There's been a tendency to treat mental health complaints as if they were a luxury. There have been a lot of people saying, come on, we've got a serious virus that's attacking us, and who has time to worry about mental health? And I think that's a very misguided point of view. I think that the mental health issues are in many ways as serious as the physical health issues, and that a healthy response to the virus requires a response to both. I've been hearing about people who are committing suicide during the virus. I've been hearing about people who are so depressed that they can't function and feed themselves. I've been hearing about people who are depressed, and depression, of course, reduces the capacity of your immune response. So my fear here is that we are neglecting the mental health aspects of this epidemic, or that have been triggered by this epidemic, and that doing so ultimately will be very dangerous for us. There are essentially two responses to depression. I mean, there are many, many responses, but they can be divided along these lines. There are the people who have depression, and then after they've recovered from it, think, that was horrible. I never want to think about it again. I don't want to consider it when I'm not feeling depressed. I want to just put it behind me and get on with my life. And ironically, those are the people who are most vulnerable to being disabled by a relapse, because they haven't incorporated the depression into the narrative of their lives. And then there are people who decide, well, depression was horrible. I hope I never have one again, but it's part of me and part of who I am, and it's quite likely that it will surface again. And when it does, it doesn't disrupt my life narrative, but rather continues it. And those people, though they may have a horrible depression, and I don't want to undersell the horror of the depression that may recur, those people are better equipped when the new depression comes along to say, yes, this is part of who I am, and I got through it last time, and I'm going to get through it this time, and I remember what I did, and to be able to say that openly to people. For me, I felt, having come out of the closet as a gay person, that I never wanted to be in another closet again. So when I got depressed, I really wasn't up for trying to keep it a big secret, as so many people try to keep their depression secret from people. And I talked about it, and later on I wrote about it. I don't feel that everyone has to go through the same kind of self-exposure that I have. I chose to do that because I hoped it would be helpful to other people. But I think acknowledging the depression, helps. Keeping secrets is very stressful and exhausting. Being depressed is very stressful and exhausting. A lot of people expend the energy that could best be spent on getting better on trying to keep it secret. I think it's a waste of that energy, and that being able to be open, at least with the people you're closest to, at least with those who are able to understand, and more people can understand than anyone thinks when they're depressed, I think it's very helpful. It's certainly been very helpful for me. Depression among impoverished populations is very common. I mean, we have to understand that depression is caused when a genetic vulnerability is triggered by external circumstances. And the genetic vulnerability is presumably evenly distributed across the class spectrum. And people who are impoverished or who are struggling actually have more external stimuli to depression than others. The reason that it tends not to be picked up is because if you have a lovely life and you feel terribly depressed, then you think to yourself, I wonder why I feel this way. I feel miserable. Why am I so miserable? And you go and you seek out an explanation, and you possibly get help. If your life is bleak and horrible and difficult, and you feel miserable all the time, you think the way I feel is a natural consequence of the way my life is. But in many instances, it's not that you're depressed because your life is so awful. It's that your life is so awful because you're too depressed to be able to do something and handle the difficulties of your life. And so depression among impoverished populations is terribly under-recognized, terribly underdiagnosed, and hideously undertreated. The fact of the matter is that people who are depressed are quite disabled. There are many things that they're unable to do. And people who are poor and depressed stand very little chance of bettering their circumstances or functioning in the world. if you treat those populations and you help the people who are depressed to get better, many of them are then able to enter the working economy and become part of what keeps the society alive and going. They take better care of their children and get them more education. They work harder themselves. All kinds of savings accrue that are not only humanitarian, but also economic. And so the failure to take care of those people and to engage in active outreach to figure out which impoverished populations are depressed, that's not only a cruelty, it's also really dumb in terms of national economy and the coherence of a national system.